Palestinian state recognition the endgame of Gaza peace process. Italy hydroelectric plant explosion kills at least 4 people. Good afternoon and Salam Aidil Fitri. You're watching World Today. I'm Brendan Lepore. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim has stressed the importance of unity among Malaysians, irrespective of race or religion, to elevate the nation to greater and dignified heights. In his special address in conjunction with Hari Raya Aidil Fitri, the Premier said the country cannot marginalize or antagonize any group or community, regardless of whether they are in the majority or minority for any reason. However, he said the framework of nation building should not underestimate the importance of Islam as the federal religion and the advancement of Sharia law in the country.
Namun, jangan kita anggap ini sebagai suatu sijil peluang untuk meremehkan, menghina atau merusakkan kaedah, budaya dan cara hidup orang lain. Inilah perimbangan, keseimbangan yang perlu dipertahankan dalam semangat kita di Malaysia merayakan Hari Raya Aidilfitri Mubarak ini.
Datuk Seri Anwar also called on the people to grasp the true essence of Aidilfitri, a time when Muslims celebrate their triumph in returning to the core of humanity through the sanctity of Ramadan, which serves as a spiritual platform for abandoning harmful practices and customs. Ireland will move to recognise a Palestinian state in the coming weeks, with Foreign Minister Michael Martin said he will bring a formal proposal on the issue to the government when wider international discussions are complete. Australia also advocated formal recognition of a Palestinian state, further shattering a long-standing diplomatic taboo in the West. Martin said that for the past 6 months, he has been in discussions about recognition with other countries involved in peace initiatives. Last month, the leaders of Spain, Ireland, Slovakia and Malta said in a joint statement that they stand ready to recognize Palestinian statehood. Ireland has long said it has no objection in principle to officially recognizing the Palestinian state if it could help the peace process in West Asia. Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong meanwhile said that recognizing a state of Palestine could restart the moribund West Asia peace process and undermine extremist forces in the area. She said recognizing a Palestinian state does not just offer the Palestinian people an opportunity to realize their aspirations, but also strengthens the process for peace. For decades, the formal recognition of a Palestinian state has been seen as the endgame of a peace process between Palestine and Israel. In a related development, US President Joe Biden said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Gaza policy was a mistake and urged Israel to call for a ceasefire. Biden's comments were some of his strongest criticism yet of Netanyahu amid growing tensions over the civilian death toll from Israel's war on Hamas and dire conditions inside Gaza. Biden reiterated that an Israeli drone attack last week that killed 7 aid workers from a US-based charity in Gaza was outrageous.
Everyone from the Saudis to the Jordanians to the Egyptians. I think what he's doing is a mistake. I don't agree with his approach. I think it's outrageous that those 3 vehicles were hit by drones and taken out on a highway where it wasn't like it was along the shore. It wasn't like there was a convoy moving there, etc. So what I'm calling for is for the Israelis to just call for a ceasefire. Well, it suggested that
his remarks on a ceasefire marked a shift from his previous comments, in which he has said the burden lies with Hamas to agree to a truce and hostage release deal.
That I have that power.
While many Muslims around the world are eager to joyously celebrate Aidilfitri festival, there is little to cheer for Palestinians this year. Palestinians in Gaza said the extra supplies were still nowhere near enough to ease harsh conditions, with nearly all the crowded territory's inhabitants displaced from their homes. In Gaza's Jabalia refugee camp, Palestinians gathered at a market, while others were at a school turned into a shelter.
يجي العيد لنا بالظلم والدمار ولسه ما جاش وقف اطلاق النار ما بزبط. احنا بدنا نصل زي ما قلنا شعب فلسطين انه يعيش حياه سليمه، حياه بسيطه، انه يكون الموارد الانسانيه والموارد كذا انه يوصل لبيوت كل الناس من دون تمييز ومن دون عنصريه ومن دون تفرقه، انه يوصل لكل بيت، المريض، الكبير السن، الطفل اللي زينا المصابين.
العيد في العاده ياتي ببهجه وسعاده، لكن قد شاخ الأطفال مبكرا وقد شحب الوجه فوق الشحب مزيدا وتكرارا. أترى العيد هذه المرة يأتي بتلك البهجة والسرور أم قد زاد الاحتلال علينا فوق الحصار كدا وتعبا وذوقنا المر بعد المر؟ فقد أتى العيد وحقيقة لا معنى لكلمة عيد من داخل مراكز الإيواء.
Israel's attacks has killed at least 33,360 people in Gaza, mostly women and children. And in other news, Simon Harris became Ireland's youngest ever Prime Minister, pledging to bring new energy to the role but conceding that time is tight before looming crucial election tests. Harris, 37, replaces Leo Varadkar, who abruptly quit last month, citing personal and political reasons.
I accept this new role in a spirit of humility, ready for the challenge and full of energy and determination about what can be achieved. As Taoiseach, I want to bring new ideas, a new energy, and I hope a new empathy to public life. But politics is never about the office holder. This is not about me. It is about all of us, working together to serve the people.
Ireland's parliament voted 88 to 69 in favour of Harris, who was officially installed at a ceremony with President Michael D. Higgins. The centre-right Fine Gael party, part of a three-party governing coalition, selected Harris as its leader following an uncontested election after Varadkar resigned. But he faces key elections within months as well as domestic pressure to tackle crisis over housing and opposition to migration. Harris's prominence on social media, especially TikTok, has made him one of the most visible politicians in Ireland. South Koreans vote to elect a new parliament in a bitterly fought race seen by some analysts as a referendum on President Yoon Suk-yeol, whose popularity has suffered amid a cost of living crisis and a spate of political scandals. The opposition Democratic Party, DP, which already dominates the 300-member legislature, has hammered Yoon and his Conservative People Power Party, PPP, for mismanaging the economy and failing to rein in inflation. PPP leader Hang Dong-hun said a big win by the DP, whose leader is facing corruption charges, would create a crisis for the country. He also won against giving the opposition an unprecedented supermajority of 200 seats. Opinion polls are mixed, and the two major parties have said dozens of districts are too close to call, but some party leaders and political analysts predict DP is likely to win a majority. Yoon has been suffering from low approval ratings for months, having come to power in 2022, vowing to cut taxes, ease business regulations and expand family support in the world's fastest aging society. While Yoon has made it a top priority to strengthen security alliance with the United States and Japan, foreign policy has not played significantly on campaign trails, and little change is expected on the diplomatic front, whatever the results. And over in South Sudan, the National Elections Commission plans to start voter registration in June for long-delayed elections due to take place at the end of the year. The head of the commission, Abenego Akok, said a draft timetable had been drawn up for the first ever poll in the history of the world's youngest nation.
Share with us some of the challenges
However, he did not announce a definitive date for the vote that has been scheduled for December under a new roadmap established last year. He also said that the first step would be voter registration that would begin in June. South Sudan has not held an election since it gained independence from Sudan in July 2011, and the nation is plagued by chronic violence, poverty, and natural disasters. Plans for elections have been hobbled by relentless feuding between President Salva Kiir and his arch-nemesis, Vice President Riek Machar. Forces loyal to the two rivals fought a bloody civil war between 2013 and 2018 that left around 400,000 people dead and millions displaced. A peace deal was agreed in 2018 that laid out a transition period to pave the way for general elections. But to the exasperation of the international community, persistent disputes have left key provisions of the deal unfulfilled, and transition timelines repeatedly delayed. And still ahead, top Europe court charged Switzerland in landmark climate ruling. Stay with us. Before that, an explosion at an Italian hydroelectric power plant killed at least 4 people and left 5 missing. An official from the Bologna prefecture in central Italy said 3 people were also injured in the incident at the Barghi plant, run by Enel Green Power, located on Lake Suviana. Fire service images showed smoke rising from the plant on the water's edge, where firefighters searched for the missing following the early afternoon blast. The mayor of the nearby town of Camugnano, Marco Massinara, called the explosion a terrible workplace accident that affected the entire community. He said it seems there was a floor slab collapse and rescue was difficult as a lot of water entered inside the 8th basement floor. No official cause of the explosion has yet been determined. Enel Green Power, the renewables unit of energy giant Enel that operates the plant, said it was coordinating with the authorities. Production was halted, but there was no impact on local or national supply. The company informs that it is continuing to operate in line with all the necessary safety measures as per internal procedures to guarantee the evacuation of its staff. The European Court of Human Rights said Switzerland was not doing enough to tackle climate change in a historic decision that could force governments to adopt more ambitious climate policies. The court found that the Swiss state had violated Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which guarantees the right to respect for private and family life. The Swiss Association of Elders for Climate Protection, 2,500 women, aged 73 on average, had complained about the failings of the Swiss authorities in terms of climate protection that could seriously harm their health.
The court finds that there were some critical lacunae in the Swiss authorities' process of putting in place the relevant domestic regulatory framework. This included a failure to quantify, through a carbon budget or otherwise, national greenhouse gas emissions limitations.
The court ordered the Swiss state to pay the association €80,000 within 3 months. Jua Chowdhury, a lawyer from the Center for International Environmental Law, said the ruling was historic and is expected to influence climate action and climate litigation across Europe and far beyond.
Of its public delivery of judgments and decisions.
Meanwhile, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador suggested that Ecuador felt supported by other governments in its raid on Mexico's embassy in Quito, while broadcasting CCTV images of Ecuadorian agents forcing their way inside the embassy and facing off a Mexican official. Video clips from inside the embassy broadcast during López Obrador's daily press conference showed a door finally forced open, as well as a man who appeared to be Jorge Glass, Ecuador's former vice president, taking shelter in the embassy, being carried out with his arms and legs hoisted by police or soldiers. The video also showed embassy staff attempting to block another door, but then being moved aside by armed Ecuadorian security officers. Glass, already twice convicted of corruption and now facing fresh charges, was arrested on Friday after having lived in the Mexican embassy since December. Lopez Obrador criticized the US and Canada's ambiguous position on the conflict and suggested other powers could be supporting Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa. Yesterday, the United States asked Ecuador to work with Mexico to find a resolution to a diplomatic dispute. And now, Venezuelan Attorney General Tariq Saab said former oil minister Tariq El-Aissami, one of the most influential officials in President Nicolás Maduro's government, has been arrested in a corruption probe into state oil company PDVSA. He said former Finance Minister Simon Zerpa and businessman Sarmak Lopez have also been detained. El-Aissami surprisingly resigned in March last year amid a wide anti-corruption probe ordered by Maduro, which has been mainly focused on wrongdoing at PDVSA. The former minister has also not spoken publicly for more than a year. Commenting further, Saab said the three men are facing charges of treason, money laundering, conspiracy, and misdirection of public funds. According to the Attorney General, the case involves a network of PDVSA executives who used their positions to carry out illegal operations, including some involving cryptocurrencies. Photos shared by Saab's office showed Zerba being led down a street in handcuffs, while others showed El-Aissami and Lopez being led to cells by balaclava-clad officials. All of the men have been under sanctions by the United States since 2017, with El-Aissami and Lopez facing drug charges. On another note, Colombian prosecutors will take ex-president Alvaro Uribe to trial in a witness tampering and fraud case. The Attorney General's office said it has presented a written accusation against the former head of state to the Supreme Court. Uribe and several allies have been investigated over allegations of witness tampering carried out in an attempt to discredit accusations he had ties to right-wing paramilitaries. Uribe, however, has always maintained his innocence. The development is the latest update in a long-running legal battle, where the Superior Court of Bogota most recently ruled in October against shelving the case, following a request by a prosecutor. A statement from the prosecutor's office said once the administrative arm of a court has cleared the documents, the hearing for the formalization of charges will take place on the date and at the time fixed by the court. Uribe's legal team, meanwhile, did not immediately respond to a request for comments. Last month, Luz Adriana Camargo was appointed the new Attorney General following weeks of political tensions over delays to replace the outgoing Francisco Barbosa. And also facing the law, the parents of a teenager who carried out a deadly school shooting in the U.S. state of Michigan was sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison in an unprecedented and closely watched case. Jennifer Crumbley, 46, and her husband James, 47, were the first parents of a school shooter convicted of involuntary manslaughter in the United States for the actions of their child. Oakland County Circuit Court Judge Cheryl Matthews sentenced them to 10 and 15 years in prison each, with credit for the 28 months they had already spent behind bars. Their son Ethan, who is now 17, is serving a life sentence for the 30th November 2021 shooting, which left 4 students dead and 7 other people injured at Oxford High School. During separate trials, the Crumbleys were accused of ignoring warnings that their son had mental health struggles. Jennifer Crumbley testified during her trial that her husband bought their son the handgun he used in the attack just days earlier as an early Christmas present. The Crumbleys were summoned to the school on the day of the shooting itself after a teacher became alarmed by a violent drawing she found on Ethan's desk. They were shown the drawing and advised they needed to get the boy into counseling, but the parents allegedly resisted taking their son home and he returned to class. He later entered the bathroom, emerged with a gun which had been concealed in his backpack, and fired more than 30 shots.
You will have credit for 8.
Arizona's top court revived a law dating to 1864 that bans abortion in virtually all instances, another setback for reproductive rights in the state, where the procedure already was barred starting at 15 weeks of pregnancy. The Arizona Supreme Court ruled 4-2 in favor of an anti-abortion obstetrician and a county prosecutor who took up defense of the law after the state's Democratic Attorney General declined to do so. The state High Court lifted the stay of enforcement of the 19th century law but will only allow it to be enforced prospectively. It stayed enforcement of its decision for 14 days to allow the parties to raise any remaining issues at the trial court level. Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays, a Democrat, said she is exploring next steps as the possibility of appealing the decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. The ruling marked the latest legal setback for abortion rights, following a ruling last week by the Florida Supreme Court that cleared the way for a Republican-backed law banning abortion up to 6 weeks of pregnancy to take effect. States were allowed to adopt such bans after the conservative majority U.S. Supreme Court in June 2022 overturned its landmark 1973 ruling in Roe v. Wade that had made access to abortion a constitutional right nationwide.
It should be.
Let's move on to sports. Manchester City and Real Madrid evenly poised after classic. Stay with us. Kicking off our sports segment with football, Real Madrid and Manchester City slugged out a thrilling 3-3 draw in a rip-roaring Champions League quarter-final clash under the Bernabeu stadium roof, leaving the tie between the last two holders of the trophy wide open for the second leg. The noisy home crowd have been left stunned after 2 minutes when City midfielder Bernardo Silva took advantage of a one-man wall to drill a low free kick from 40 metres just inside Andre Lunin's post to give the visitors the lead. Eduardo Camavinga soon helped level the scores after 12 minutes when his long-range strike deflected off defender Ruben Diaz for an own goal after wrong-footing keeper Stefan Ortega. 2 minutes later, Vinicius Jr. delivered a brilliant through ball that Rodrigo took in his stride before his weak shot was deflected off Manuel Akanji's heel to give the hosts the lead. The visitors level in the 66th minute with a stunning Phil Foden strike into the top corner and went ahead as Josko Gvardiol fired home in similar fashion 5 minutes later for his first City goal. Real were not too beaten, though, and Federico Valverde produced a glorious volley in the 79th minute to rescue a draw on another epic Champions League night that left the fans eager for more in the second leg in Manchester next week. Meanwhile, Bayern Munich striker Harry Kane returned to North London to score his customary goal against Arsenal as the first leg of their Champions League quarter-final tie ended 2-2 today. Bayern initially looked comfortable despite having no fans inside the Emirates as punishment for crowd trouble in the previous round. But they were undone in the 12th minute when Ben White played the ball inside to Bukayo Saka, who had time to pick his spot and curled the low left-footed shot beyond Manuel Neuer. Arsenal carelessly lost possession in the 18th minute and Bayern punished them as Leon Goretzka slipped a perfect pass to Serge Gnabry, who clipped a finished pass the on-rushing David Raya. All Arsenal's poise vanished then as Leroy Sané was allowed to run before being tripped in the area by William Saliba, and referee Glenn Nyberg had the simplest decision to point to the penalty spot. Up stepped Kane, and despite the whistles, no one really expected him to miss as he coolly sent Raya the wrong way. With Arsenal struggling to create any meaningful chances, Mikel Arteta sent on Leandro Trossard and Gabriel Jesus just past the midway point of the second half. And it was Trossard who brought the home fans back to life as he guided in a 76-minute equaliser. And in tennis, world number 1 Novak Djokovic said his feeling was great as he flew past Roman Safiullin in straight sets at the Monte Carlo Masters. After third seed, Carlos Alcaraz withdrew from the event due to injury. After receiving a bye in the first round, Djokovic was imperious on the main Rainier, the third court, as he won 6-1, 6-2 against the unseeded Russian. The Serb needed just 1 hour and 10 minutes to make a return to winning ways in his first match since a shock early exit at Indian Wells to Italian Luca Nardi. The 36-year-old became the oldest world number 1 in the history of the ATP rankings, when he took to the court in Monte Carlo, surpassing Roger Federer's record. But there was no sign of Djokovic feeling his age as he broke Safiulin's serve twice to race into a 4-love lead in the first set. Djokovic went on to break his opponent's serve 5 times over the course of a routine win, and now faces a third-round meeting with Lorenzo Musetti after the Italian ousted rising French starlet Arthur Fields 6-3, 7-5. Before Djokovic took to the court, Carlos Alcaraz announced he was pulling out of Monte Carlo after failing to recover from an injury to his right forearm. The 20-year-old Spaniard, whose last match came in the straight sets defeat by Grigor Dimitrov in Miami last month, was due to go straight into Wednesday's second round against Canadian Felix Auger-Aliassime. He will be replaced in the draw by Italian Lorenzo Sonego, who was drafted in as a lucky loser. The match against Auger-Aliassime was said to be the 2-time Grand Slam winner's second ever appearance at Monte Carlo, following his withdrawal from the tournament last year and a 3-set defeat in his only match of the 2022 edition. And still in tennis, Hubert Hurkacz is into the second round of Monte Carlo Masters with a 6-4, 3-6, 7-6 win, but was made to battle by Britain's Jack Draper after the polished 10th seed looked like dominating early on. There was little time for last week's Estoril champion Hubert Hurkacz to settle on the Monte Carlo clay. The 10-seeded Pole was pushed all the way in an absorbing encounter with Draper on Côte des Princes before prevailing after 2 hours and 24 minutes. Hurkacz powered 31 minutes to Draper's 19, but he still struggled to shake off the determined Briton as the pair met in Monte Carlo for the second straight year. Just as he did in the second round last year, Hurkacz edged his opponent in a deciding set to extend his winning streak to 5 matches. Hurkacz's second round assignment is a first Lexus ATP head-to-head clash on clay with Roberto Bautista Agut after the Spaniard defeated Facundo Diaz Acosta 6-2, 6-4. And in golf, a defiant Tiger Woods refused to be put out to Augusta National Pastures, insisting he was more focused on a 6 Masters green jacket than taking on the role of ceremonial starter or any other job that is not winning tournaments. Ravaged by injuries that have limited him to 1 PGA Tour start this season that lasted just 24 holes, Woods has always maintained he would never enter a tournament he did not believe he could win, and stands by that even in the face of long odds. Some reporters at Woods' pre-Masters press conference, which struck a retirement vibe, were not as convinced. The 48-year-old was asked, given his laundry list of fitness issues, if he was contemplating joining Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player and Tom Watson as Masters ceremonial starters or taking on the role of Ryder Cup captain. Woods brushed off both suggestions, making it clear he was focused on the here and now. The declaration seemed to lack the conviction of the past, but there is little doubt Woods believes he can defy the odds, as he has done so many times before, particularly at the Masters. Woods has never missed a Masters cut as a professional, and this week could extend his streak to a tournament record 24, after tying Gary Player and Fred Couples last year. And that wraps up World Today. In our top story, Palestinian state recognition, the end game of Gaza peace process. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm Brenda Lepol. Thanks for your company and Selamat Hari Raya. Stay safe. Have a good one.